How is it possible that a single man shook the very foundations of an entire empire? Rome, a city built on conquests, absolute power, and a legendary army, seemed invincible. But in a distant corner of the Mediterranean, something dark and mysterious was brewing. It wasn't a king or a god. It was someone far more dangerous and tireless strategist imbued with deep hatred, willing to challenge the impossible. His name would echo as an eternal threat in the history of Rome, Hannibal Barca. Did you know that this man, with barely an army of 50,000 soldiers and war elephants, crossed the Alps in winter, shaking the very foundations of Rome? This is not just a story of wars and battles. It's a journey of obsession, sacrifice, and an oath that sealed the fate of two civilizations. Join me as we uncover the story of the general who brought Rome to its knees, while his own story of glory and tragedy transcended time. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and share with us in the comments which other historical legends you would like us to revive with this same approach. Now, join me on this journey to the heart of the greatest conflict of antiquity. In the soft lands of Sicily, where Rome and Carthage fought for control of the Mediterranean, what began as a simple conflict would become the beginning of an epic confrontation. But before the war, before the battles, before the spilled blood, there was a proud and strategic port city that would dominate the seas. Carthage, it wasn't just a city, it was the capital of a maritime empire, the pulse of endless trade, and the home of those who saw in Rome not an ally, but a threat to their existence. But what Rome didn't know was that in the warm lands of North Africa, a man was watching. All of this waiting for his moment. Hannibal Barca, a child destined for war, grew up fed by hatred toward Rome. In the camps of his father, Hannibal Barca, he was trained in the arts of combat, but also in the bitter lesson of disdain toward those who humiliated his nation. Hannibal, at just 9 years old, made an oath that would forever change the course of history. I will never be a friend of Rome. I will never stop fighting against it. This oath was not just a symbolic act, it was a burning promise forged in the darkness of a sacred temple that would turn into an obsession. From that moment on, Hannibal became more than a man. He became the personification of revenge. The years passed, and Carthage, humiliated after the First Punic War, was ready to rise again. Hamilcar, the relentless commander, found in Hispania not only a source of resources, but a new land where his son, Hannibal, could forge his army. The Iberian Peninsula became his battlefield, and the boy who had sworn to destroy Rome began to build the military power that would shake the foundations of the greatest empire in the known world. As the silver mines brought wealth and the Iberian peoples fell under the Carthaginian power, Hannibal prepared for the war of his life. The spark that would unleash hell came when Rome attacked Saguntum, a Carthaginian ally located in Carthaginian territory. This provocation was all Hannibal needed to launch his attack. Without waiting for political approval, he gathered his army and with a firm determination began the journey that would lead the Romans to face the greatest challenge they could ever imagine, crossing the Alps in the middle of winter. But what happened next was not just a military campaign. It was a legend forged with blood, sacrifice, and unbreakable will. With more than 50,000 soldiers, thousands of horses, and several elephants, Hannibal entered the Alps. The journey was cruel, and many did not survive. Winter took the lives of men and animals alike. However, Hannibal succeeded. When he descended the slopes toward Italy, Rome could not believe what was happening. An invincible army had been challenged by nature itself and had triumphed. The Second Punic War had begun. Hannibal, with his reduced army, began winning battle after battle. Ticino, Trebia, Lake Trasimeno. Each victory was a humiliation for Rome. The largest and most disciplined army in the world, the pride of Rome, was fleeing, bleeding and dying at the hands of a man who seemed invincible. But in a masterstroke, Hannibal avoided marching directly toward Rome. Why not use his victory to strike at the heart of the empire? Some say he was waiting for Rome's allied cities to rebel. Others believe he needed to reinforce his troops. But the truth is that each day that passed, Rome was preparing. And every day it didn't fall, it became more dangerous. Would Hannibal achieve his final revenge? Or would the great Roman war machine recover, creating one of the most epic stories in human history? Everything would be decided in one battle, a battle that would change the history of Rome forever. The Roman army, humiliated but not defeated, began to gather under the leadership of a new man. His name was Publius Cornelius Scipio, a young general who, after surviving the massacre at Cannae, began to forge a plan that would change the course of history. While Hannibal continued ravaging southern Italy, Scipio prepared to do the unthinkable: bring the war directly to Carthage. Rome was not just learning to resist, it was starting to learn to attack. Scipio was not only a skilled strategist, but also a brave leader who inspired his men. He decided to cut Hannibal's supply lines, first in Hispania and then in Africa, bringing the war to the heart of Carthage. The Roman Senate supported him, but no one in Rome knew that this young general could be the key to defeating the legendary Carthaginian commander. Hannibal, upon hearing the news that Scipio was crossing the sea to Africa, understood that his days in Italy were coming to an end. After having defeated the Roman legions over and over again, after humiliating the Republic on the battlefield, he now found himself at a crossroads. Carthage could not afford to lose the war on its own territory, so Hannibal, as always, prepared for the worst. The final battle. The final battle took place on the field of Zama in 202 BC, a barren and dusty ground where the fate of two empires would be decided. In front of Hannibal stood the Roman army, reinforced by last-minute allies, including the Numidian cavalry, former allies of Carthage. But Hannibal was no ordinary commander. Despite clearly being at a disadvantage, his tactical genius remained intact. He had fought many battles, but this would be his greatest test. The Romans knew it, and they knew they could not let him escape. Hannibal, with his experience, once again tried to surprise his enemies, but this time Scipio had learned from previous tactics. The famous Carthaginian cavalry, which had been decisive many times, would now be neutralized with innovative strategies. The war elephants, once symbols of power and fear, were directed in such a way that they could not break the Roman lines. At Zama, Hannibal discovered that time and war had taken their toll. The battle was fierce. The scorching sun of North Africa beat mercilessly on the soldiers' heads. But the outcome was inevitable. Hannibal, the great commander, was defeated. The young man who had shaken the gates of Rome, who had crossed the Alps, who had crushed the legions in decisive battles, now saw his dreams of revenge fade before the eyes of the world. After the defeat, Carthage was subjected to even greater humiliation. The treaty that followed the Battle of Zama left no room for hope. Their fleets were burned, their naval power destroyed. Carthage would no longer be the same. But the most painful thing was not the destruction of the city, but the loss of Carthaginian dignity. The Republic of Rome had not only won the war, it had banished Carthage from history, reducing it to a shadow of what it once was. However, Hannibal would not die at Zama. The Carthaginian general, pursued by Rome and his own ghosts, became a fugitive. He traveled through various courts, seeking refuge wherever he could, offering his military genius to any kingdom willing to face Rome. But even in exile, Hannibal's name continued to be feared, and his legend, though defeated, did not fade. Hannibal's story did not end with his defeat at Zama. His figure transcended beyond his time and borders. Even in Rome, where his name was remembered with fear, Hannibal became a symbol of unstoppable struggle, resistance against adversity. Strategists and generals throughout the centuries have studied his tactics, admiring his ability to think beyond the established limits, challenging great empires with cunning and unwavering will. Napoleon, Wellington, and many other military leaders were inspired by his genius. Hannibal, though defeated, had gained something greater than any battle: the eternal respect of those who understood what he had been able to achieve. In his final years, Hannibal faced his ultimate destiny. Without a homeland, without an army, the man who once challenged the world's greatest empire decided to abandon the fight. Cornered, he chose to take his own life rather than fall into Roman hands. His death, an act of defiance, symbolized everything he was: a man who never gave up, who never stopped fighting, even when the whole world seemed to have abandoned him. Hannibal's story is one of victories and defeats, but above all, of an unbreakable will. Although Rome defeated Carthage, it could not destroy its legacy. The man who swore to destroy it, Hannibal Barca, lived on forever in the collective memory, a symbol of resistance, audacity, and fighting until the last breath. A boy who swore vengeance, a man who brought Rome to its knees, a general whose name remains etched in history as a reminder of what it means to defy the impossible. And you, what do you think? Do you believe Hannibal could have defeated Rome if he had marched on the city after his victory at Cannae? Let us know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more epic stories from ancient history. See you in the next video.